All right, this is going to be a tricky one, but bear with me. We're going to look at a movie with some of the most passionate haters in the world, and I'm going to dare to make a defense for that movie. Let's look at The Phantom Menace. So yeah, I thought long and hard about whether I should even make this episode. I'm gonna get some flack for even thinking about this, but I feel it probably needs to be said. But before I say it, yeah, Jar Jar Binks is annoying, okay? Jake Lloyd doesn't give off that great a performance. I mean, he's a kid, but yeah, even for a kid, maybe this isn't super great. Yeah, maybe some of the CGI moments are sort of video gamey. Maybe the writing isn't always the best. Maybe the Trade Federation Viceroy are done poorly. Maybe there's a lot of, hey, look over there. Remember this? Remember R2-D2? Remember Darth Vader? He's young now. Remember Obi-Wan? He's young now. Remember Yoda? He's here too. Yeah, all this is real, and I forgot what I'm supposed to be doing here. Defending this, was I? Yeah, you know what? Yes. I'm defending this movie, and not because of all these things I just listed. Movies have their flaws, and boy, does this movie have flaws. But wow, do you remember all of this?
At last we will have revenge. We'll handle this.
This blew people's minds when it came out, and that on its own isn't necessarily enough to back me up, but do you have any idea how much this movie set up the rest of Star Wars? Yes, they started building an expanded universe after the first trilogy, but there were so many firsts in this movie. Take the Force push, for instance. This is expected in Star Wars now, but remember how cool it was when we first saw Obi-Wan do this? I remember freaking out when I was a kid. Did he just reach out his hand and push them? And then that part when Darth Maul shows up and it's like, vroom, and you're like, oh boy, here we go, and he's like, vroom again, and you're like, what? And then we get the single greatest fight battle score of all time? The Duel of the Fates, dude. This music. Watch this scene without any context, and I've got no doubt that you still get such a strong sense of all that's at stake. There's a bad guy that we know almost nothing about, and we see two Jedi at the peak of their ability go toe-to-toe with him. For all the failings of this movie, I can't imagine anyone gets to this point in the story without caring about what happens to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. They take on someone who's already proven himself to be a threat, and for some reason this second blade makes him able to square off with both of them at once. Oh man, I remember when Obi-Wan gets all fired up after seeing his master get mortally wounded and he's all psyching himself up, getting pumped for the big battle, and then just has at Darth Maul? Yeah, there are a few parts in the fight leading up to this that are like, yeah, okay, he could have gotten them there, or there. He could just be toying with them. But really, he actually just knows he's in a movie and knows he needs to draw it out. But this scene, you know they got the choreography down so well that what we're watching here is actually slowed down footage? Yeah, they were worried people wouldn't believe they were actually moving this quickly. They even cut out the music here, it's so exciting. Anyway, this was a bit of a tangent, but none of the other prequels have this. And yet it gets panned as the worst of the three? Man, it's the best of the three. Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith do none of these things. They're paint-by-numbers movies. Attack of the Clones is arguably unwatchable. It's just a mess, and I don't know if I'll really find many to argue with me on that, but Revenge of the Sith really isn't that much better, and that's controversial. I hear many say that this is their favorite of the three, or even the only one they liked, but the whole trilogy builds up to this movie where we finally see how Anakin goes bad, and we get the most unsatisfying nonsense possible. And don't even try to tell me Anakin versus Obi-Wan is on the same level as Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul. The fight, the music, the stakes, give me a break. I can literally feel people saying, oh, but the stakes are so high in Revenge of the Sith. No, they're not. By the time they fight, it's over. The bad guys have pulled off their plan. Literally, we're just watching them square off for ages before what everyone knows is gonna happen happens. Obi-Wan wins, Anakin gets all messed up and needs machine parts in order to survive. This would be powerful if we liked Anakin and felt something through his arc. But the choices made leave us with a bland character that is very difficult to connect with. They had everything they needed to make something incredible. That's proven with the way the Clone Wars has been able to handle Anakin's character. Vader needed to be a tragic, sympathetic character, but instead we get a whiny brat who nobody likes, and I know this argument's been made to death, but how much better would it have been if we got a likable character who goes bad in a way that tugs at our heart and makes us ache for him and the pain behind everything in his story? This would have added so much meaning behind the moments in the original trilogy, and there was so much material to work with. But with bad writing and angsty performances, it was all ruined. And all of that happens in episodes 2 and 3. Yet episode 1 is somehow widely considered to be the worst one. Star Wars movies, video games, books all borrow from things that we saw for the first time in The Phantom Menace. Things that everyone loves. Things that disappoint people when they're not included. Killer sword fights, dope force powers, badass characters. The animated show literally brought Darth Maul back from the dead because he's so popular. He barely says a thing, but the mystique behind him makes him one of the most interesting characters in the series. Admittedly, there should have been more of these. Anakin should have been fascinating, but I digress. Actually, while we're on this, I admit I may be a little late to the party here, but I want to bring up a particular point. Quit picking on Jake Lloyd. He was a kid, and he did fine, really. Also, it's a space fantasy story, one that someone else came up with. Stop acting like anyone owes you anything just because you liked something once and wanted later iterations to be better than they were. Hardcore fans make death threats to people who ruin the intellectual property that for some reason they think belongs to them. Get over yourselves. If you think you can do it better, then take that energy and put it into your own series that becomes one of the most dominating IPs on the planet. I've completely lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? Darth Maul and super cool. Oh yeah, remember how cool it was to see Obi-Wan for the first time when he was super capable? Remember that part when he's like, I'll deal with that. And then he walks over to those guards and you're like, whoa, he's gonna deal with all of them and free all those guys? He doesn't even look phased. And then he just goes to town on them? I so badly wanted to be him when I was a kid. Yeah, you can tell me a lot of this is nostalgia, and yeah, it probably is. But I swear this stuff is cool no matter what. The pod race section is sort of pointless plot-wise, but it's still classic Star Wars fare. I suppose it also helps cement that this kid isn't just an ordinary kid. I don't know, I could go either way on that. But remember this part when Palpatine goes, kill them immediately, and then the music surges and you're like, oh man, it's going down, and the guns drop down, and the dude's like, Captain, look, and they get blown up, and then you're like, oh man, what's gonna happen? And then you're like, whoa, they could sense that from the other room? This whole scene is so awesome. What a way to introduce two characters. Remember that part when they're like, check it out, Corporal, we'll cover you, and then they're like, vroom, and then they jump out there and start tearing them to pieces? We'd never seen a Jedi having at it like this before. There's been minimal exposition, and we get a show-don't-tell approach to learn how both Jedi are completely on top of what's going on. It was so cool. And then he's like, narrow against the one, and then they're like, this is impossible, and the music surges again, and then you're like, they're not even fazed by what's happening because they're still coming through. Man, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And then finally the destroyer droids show up and Qui-Gon's like, it's a standoff, let's go. And then they're like, narrow, and they blast down the hallway. Say what you want about this movie, this whole intro section is just the best. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm not claiming that this is a masterpiece. There's some silly choices made for sure, and you'll notice that I'm only really talking about a few elements of the movie. There's a lot left to be desired here, but I see way more mistakes made and potential lost in the following two movies. I'm really just saying that many don't seem to appreciate the things this movie did right. And how important this movie was to the series and how unexceptional the other two are. The opening space scene in Revenge is cool, but honestly only until the dialogue starts.
Oh, I see it. Oh, this is going to be easy.
And it's not Ewan's fault, he does the best with what he's given by the script, which isn't much. But for all the issues with episode 1, I'd argue that it really doesn't suffer nearly as much as its sequels, which are such a slog to get through. I feel like anyone who's going to comment on this will have done so long before this part of the video, but as always, tell me what you think below. These are just my thoughts and opinions, and it's a good thing to think critically for ourselves and be comfortable disagreeing. I think it's important to remember that these are just movies. They can definitely be a lot of fun, and I completely understand why they are stories and experiences that were and are special to people. That's it for me this time. I love you guys. We'll talk soon.